Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this quick Edison 365 webinar around improving your IT demand management and governance. It should not be that hard. Demand management is a critical part of IT governance efforts. Today, top-performing organizations are combining the soft skills with supporting software services for the best return on their investments. Unfortunately, many companies today have gone through and overcomplicated these processes, both in terms of the people required, the effort, and the tools to use them going forward. My name's Tad Haas with Edison 365, and thank you for joining us this morning. Our goal today is to really go through a brief concept overview, talk a little bit about the challenges that you and others in similar organizations are facing today, do a quick poll to get some of your feedback, and then spend the majority of our time actually walking through a demonstration of how Edison 365 can help make this process simpler, faster. So given the ubiquity of Office 365, we'll be spending some time talking about that platform as well and going through and helping IT leaders leverage the technologies that they have in place today. People are more connected now than ever. And this is true whether you're in the IT organization, a PMO leader, in the same building, or across the globe. You might be struggling, however, with business-focused project intake, evaluating and triaging those new project requests, building out rapid business case creations, and finding the value justifications, as well as delivering and executing for the outcomes that organizations are seeking. My goal for the next few minutes is to show you that there's a simple, better, and faster way to accomplish this demand management process. We'll frame this around the demand, we'll frame it around evaluating projects, and we'll demonstrate a couple of ways to collaborate on getting things done. But first, let's talk a little bit about this from the big picture point of view. When we talk about IT governance, it really should be about balance. And in fact, in today's environment, very much about velocity. How quickly you get things through this pipeline of possible IT projects, value streams, software solutions, and products that your company makes will help increase income, reduce risk, and make a better work environment for your IT folks. Speaking of that, maximizing the engagement and getting a lot of employee participation in this team sport of IT governance is important. And when people talk about IT governance, sometimes they do things from a top-down point of view. In other words, there's an annual planning cycle. There's quarterly reviews, and there's monthly senior leadership meetings where decisions are made and projects approved or rejected. And sometimes project requests or ideas come from the bottom up, and you might want to be able to get those from any business user, stakeholders, or analysts involved in this process. One of the other things that's important as we take a look at IT governance and demand management today is really getting the feedback from your community, going through and understanding how they feel you should vote on accepting or rejecting projects, as well as giving leadership the traditional ways of ranking and scoring these possibilities. Rapid triage and ultimately experimenting on a project in its early stages will help you determine if you should go or no go and take advantage of the capabilities that the Agile work streams help us provide today. So I'm going to put a quick poll up on the screen, and I'd love to get some of your feedback here in terms of which of the IT governance scenarios you might be struggling with today. So I'm going to launch this on your screen. My hope is that you can take just a second to click one or more of these polls. I'd love to see what sort of feedback you have on the challenges around IT demand management and governance. Project intake, approval cycles, are some of the key areas. In fact, those are two of the first that start getting hits on this review. We'll leave the poll open for just another moment or two. It looks like about 50% of you have voted, so if the rest of you can go through and do that, that would be great. Okay, terrific. And on that regard, the winner on this is the justification and approval cycles is the biggest challenge area for those of you joining the poll today. So thank you for giving us that feedback. So let's come back then and talk a little bit more about the next steps on our walkthrough today. When we talk about these challenges, I'm going to frame them up in three core stakeholder, and those are the leadership teams or the steering committees that are lacking a consistent submission process and approval workflows, or if they are in place, often they're overcomplicated. So we want to talk again about simplification. Inconsistent or complicated ranking or scoring evaluation steps. We've all seen those spreadsheets that have truckloads of forms to fill out and super complicated calculations to determine net present value, IRR, etc. There are faster and easier ways to get this done. And of course, understanding the impact on those efforts and then being able to report back to the stakeholders, whether they're in the business unit, part of the executive leadership teams, or so on. Now, if you happen to be the person that has submitted a request for a new IT project, you want to use a simple form. You want to use a simple process. You also would like to know what you need to do next to get things approved, understand who's got the ball, and know that you'll get consistent feedback and communications from your IT stakeholders. Being able to get visible status along the way is a super helpful view to let you know what's going on. And of course, always collaborating and staying involved. But many of you that have joined us today on the call come from an IT PMO perspective, or perhaps an enterprise PMO as you're going through and managing this across many IT organizations or departments throughout the business units. This then creates the challenge of visibility across, this ability to assess in-flight work versus new project requests, communicate these progress cycles, and for you, taking too long. You don't want these things to be too long or too process heavy. And then of course, IT PMOs today, like all PMOs, want to demonstrate their value as you go through the cycle. So this is important in the ways that you look at those processes. So given all of these challenges, what can we do? How can we simplify? How can we accelerate? And how can we drive towards better results? That's where we're going to dive in next so we can talk more about these actual processes today. Now I'm demonstrating on a Windows PC, and in this PC we can go through and look on a browser. I'll call up my phone in just a minute to talk a little bit more about the approach for mobile. But let's frame up what Edison does directly first before we dive in. Edison 365 as a company has provided a modular solution set that accelerates that business transformation by taking advantage of the Microsoft investment that your corporations have already made, which means that we help drive that culture of innovation and transformation. We help you justify the impact, and we help you deliver projects quickly, all using the Microsoft products you know and love. And whether that's SharePoint, whether that's Excel for tracking work that you're doing, or using some more of the modern products like Teams or Delve as you go through and look at some of the power of collaboration. We believe that IT demand management is in fact a team sport, and that it's important we take into account the strategies, the demands, and all the way through the life cycle. These are just a few of the key components that you want to drive towards. And again, whether you're doing this in a time-boxed quarterly or annual cycle, or you're on a more agile work stream where you're working through these things monthly, weekly, daily. So these are important ways to discuss. We'll demonstrate many of these today. We help you take this process from great project ideas all the way to value delivery through a suite of 3 products: Edison 365 Ideas, Business Case, and Projects. The good part about this, as a suite, it's fully encompassing start to end, but as individual products, we can meet you where you are. So if building a better business case is the biggest priority, let's start there. If managing your projects better is the most important activity, we can assist too. Or, as we'll demonstrate much of today, let's improve the intake process and make this a better experience. So let's go ahead and get started with that. I'm going to go ahead and launch our screen, and let me just pull the browser down here. Onto our desktop, and you should see a typical browser on the view today. So in this regard, I said we were built on top of Office 365, so many of you will recognize this directly as a SharePoint page, which we'll launch in a minute. But fully connected to all things Office 365 means we get to look at the documents we're collaborating on, taking advantage of all the different functionality that exists there. Well, let's dive into the business solution itself. And when we launch into the SharePoint page, Edison 365 will come up for us on our screen. Now, I'm on a touchscreen PC, so we can spend time zooming in and zooming out on some of the key metrics. I can do this on a Mac as well as on a PC. And in a minute, we'll call up a mobile device and show you how this works on an iPhone or Android. But you have a portal page which lets you go through and manage your IT requests. This helps us understand and quickly see or quickly submit a new project request. Whether I click on the form here today to simply go through and type in those requests now, or whether I dive in to understand and discover more things that might be available to us, such as taking a look at what are the things that align with particular corporate strategies. And on the left-hand side, we've identified some of those key areas around improving our IT operations or other value streams, so we can see which project requests have come in to support those key areas. Some may be far along the process, some may be just new ideas, and we can see and manage through those. We can also understand what stage they're in, how many of these have been awarded, how many are currently under review. And as both a participant and as a user or as a manager, I can come in and work with this directly today. Now, I might also want to focus in on some of the voting activities, because we also wanted to get feedback from the crowd. So if I want to give Harry some feedback on his idea about more space in the offices, I can come in and vote on his idea as well and simply give my contribution on these at that time. And this is a way you can see who's looking at it, how many eyeballs, and what sort of voting and feedback. And these then are ways for us to look at the project requests and to drill into the particular value streams, such as reducing our project request turnaround time. If we're managing new project work, we could go in and see some of those as well. And diving in on those lets us see which ideas are supporting this process or this work stream. And this helps us see directly the ideas that are being submitted forward for those. We'll talk about some more of the detail as we carry on. But at this moment, you can see inside of our collection today, we currently have a set of project requests and work streams that we're trying to get through. There's some that have been approved and so on. But let's talk about mobile for a second, because mobile's awfully important. And if we go through and I come over to my little demo screen here, I'm going to call up my iPhone. And in this case, you can see that I'm operating on my phone. If it was an Android, we'd be able to go through and see those things as well. I'm going to go ahead and launch my application for running the intake process here. And this will go through then and grab the latest information about the projects, about the information that we have coming in, about the things we want to manage, Who might be submitting the most project requests and how we're doing, what are the challenges that we're working with, and so on. But what I really want to do is just quickly go through and add an idea. And I might want to say this has to do with, when I get to the bottom of my page, the technology projects. So I'll click there and begin the process of submitting a new IT request. And in this regard, the solution will go out and see if it finds similar things. If it does, it'll take us directly to that, or it'll allow us to go through and start putting in our own information. In this case, we can type in some data on our form. We can put in information about the cost, should you care to track things. We can put dates and durations, keep track of all kinds of different items, including what strategies or what things does this align with, our cost reduction, making money, etc. And we all know this is a best practice for doing those things. We click OK. I can let it use the default image. I can go through and assign other owners, discuss it, do lots of other things if I'd like, and then or just save and publish my request. And that's how Edison 365 supports a simpler, faster way of doing this on a mobile device. What happens then is we start to collect these ideas against these work streams so we can see what is most important to us. And if we drill down into a set of IT requests, we can begin to do that. Now here we want to go through and say we've collected these ideas. We can see some of them are simple, some of them are part of big projects, but let's drill into one in detail. Here now we can start to see what information we want to collect about this state health DB, what other projects or what other ideas do we have that we want to submit around this, and how's it been voted on. Or we can go in and look at a grouping of projects and say, let's reduce our workaround and now begin the process as the IT PMO to triage, or as the senior leadership team to make some decisions about this. And so now we can see there's a collection of ideas that support this work. Well, what do? Do you meet quarterly? Do you meet monthly to go through and walk these ideas through? In our case, we want to go through and use a project request board, some people call it a portfolio Kanban, and let us take these ideas and walk them through the various stages that we have. So now we can see that we have a set of reviewers, we have a set of new draft ideas. Harry wants to do a hackathon. We might think that's a great idea, so we could simply come over here and drop it in awarded if we have the power to do that. And then we can let Harry know, cool, and we can go ahead and get started with that. And that then will let Harry know through lots of notifications, both in-app and through his email, that it's there. And make some decisions here about this, and that will let us go through and work with the idea and rate this against others. Now I can also go through, and if I want to create this as a project, I can go ahead and begin that now, or I could say I want to build a business case around this. Because Edison 365 lets you go through and see how others are rating, you can also see how other people have scored these as well, and begin the decision process around awarding and saving and moving these things through the hopper. Let's assume then for the moment that we have completed that. We've gone through all of these. We might want to communicate with others first, or we might want to go through and start to look at what do we need to do to build out a more robust business case. Here's some of the reporting we can do. And as you would think with Office 365 built solution, that we take full advantage of Power BI, and that's exactly correct. We let you drill in, drill down, and drill through, and make these very interactive. And whether you're using simple tree diagrams, list management, or more complex reports we'll see in a minute, Edison 365 takes advantage of that. Let's put on a different hat, though, and say that we're the business analyst, or we're that leadership team that needs to make some discussions and discoveries around a more detailed business case. So that's when we want to go through and flesh out more detail. And whether we create something from scratch, where we go through and pick a plan and build something out with a set of forms with phases and stages and all the different types of things that we do, or in this case, we'll investigate one that's pre-built so you don't have to watch me type. We'll take a look at that state health database example again, because here today, we can see then that we've built a model. We have a flow, everything from draft to more details, all the way through financial reviews, perhaps for capital budgeting, to ultimately a board type review in the way that we work with these. And in doing that, you'll see that we have a set of simple forms that allow us to understand what's taking place with this request, who are the managers that are involved with this, and who can okay these or not, what might be the documents that are riding along with it, and what are the histories of approvals and so on. To take a deeper look here, let's go ahead and scroll down and understand that we get to set up simple forms that allow us to understand the benefits. When will we get financial return or more product sales, whatever might be the case that we want to track? What are the timescales around execution? And whether you're just doing this to get them through the workflow themselves or to do a simplified project management here, you can do those same things. We can also go through and start to look at the costs. And on this example, we spent most of our money last year on this project. So let's go back and start to see where that money was spent on consulting and Azure cloud services. We've identified some risks, and we've also identified some resources that are required here. This helps us then set the table for understanding the impact on other work in the portfolio. Ultimately, though, in order to approve this project request, we will need to make an investment appraisal that helps us understand when will we get payback for this particular investment. What's the cost? What's the payback? And we can flesh that out and take a look at more of the details around these. We can look at more information about the resources. We can look more around the costs. We can look more about the accountabilities. For example, keeping folks up to date on what it is and who's responsible helps us with transparency, with accountability, and a way to go through and understand what we want to see around these type of benefits. Now, we won't demonstrate the details today, but suffice it to say that as a company, you have lots of control over building out the forms and the feedback, the look and feel, the type of business cases that you might be building. Some might be very IT-centric. Others might be marketing. You can talk about minor break fix and all kinds of different business cases that help you understand what the workflow is behind those. And that is also true, of course, of the forms. How do we go through, and if we want to kind of drag and drop a form onto the page and build out a form that says, well, in the beginning, we'd like to go through and get, I don't know, maybe an executive summary to start. So let's go ahead and drag and drop our executive summary as the first piece of information we want. Then we can go through and get some project history or background. We can fill in tables and forms. And these are the type of things that business users, business analysts can build. You don't necessarily need IT skill set to do that. Now, as an IT PMO, you've got that skill set, but just understand it's there available for you. Now, we've talked on the cycle of getting through the process of looking at our projects, going through some of the steps that get us to the business case itself, but we want to wrap up and talk about project management. Now that's the part of this area that's most fleshed out. Some of you might be using Microsoft Project, which of course we're built on top of and can help you with at a great extent. You might be using simple task management through SharePoint or some other project management system, and that's okay. We'll talk about why and how up front. But when we look at the actual software demonstration itself, we now want to take a quick look at how Edison 365 Projects gives us the same look and feel to look at and understand how many live projects do we currently have in the IT portfolio today, how are we doing with those, and what do we need to see. And whether we're looking at that individual state DB project or whether we're looking at a program that is also a collection of projects, that might be a transformation thing. We're going to use KPIs, red, yellow, green, of course, to give you updates on all those things. And just as we've done before, we want to understand which projects are part of that family, what's the status, and what are we doing. We can see our state health DB is dropped right into the bottom here. And as you've seen consistently, these cards work really well for mobile, so it's a terrific way of understanding how to share this as we work anywhere, anytime, any place. Reports, of course, are very important to what we want to go through and do there. And in that regard, we are again leveraging Power BI to help us understand more data about our project requests, our business cases, or the projects themselves. And here we're taking advantage of some of the off-the-shelf reporting that helps us understand risks and issues, might help us dive deeper into things around individual project status reports, which we all know is a real pain in our world for as an IT PMO. How do we go through and give updates to all of those stakeholders involved? And of course, there's lots more that we can show to give you a background about how Edison 365 can help, but that's all we really have time for today. To wrap up, we want to go through and make sure that you understand that we're here to help, and our goal is to assist with any of the questions or challenges that you might have. We are headquartered in the US here in Seattle and outside of London in the UK, with a customer base that spans the globe across all kinds of different sectors, and we have a robust partner community that's ready, able, and willing to help you with any questions, deployments, support, the type of things that you do along that way. So remember that in just a matter of a few minutes, you've seen today how Edison 365 can help you improve the process of capturing IT demand and take good project ideas or requests, turn them into great project business cases that get evaluated, approved, prioritized against other work, and then help get you through the delivery cycle that ultimately leads towards those outcomes and those values. I'm going to take a quick look on our question panel and see if there's anything top of mind from the audience today, if you've typed those in the panel. And if so, we'll get to those. If they're a little bit longer, we might reply back to you through email and give you some feedback at that time. With that being said, we are at the bottom of the hour, so I'd like to thank you again for joining our webinar today. You will receive a follow-up email with information and a link to this recording. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, tad.haas@edison365 or hello@edison365.com with questions. And of course, please visit our website for additional information. Thank you and have a great morning, afternoon, or evening.